right? You don't have to go build a bunch of fancy technology day one to be successful. You just got to find a way to get in with some customers and service them really, really well, grow with them. And you got to build a network of drivers and carriers.
Welcome, everyone, to an episode of The Big Fish in Logistics. Today, we have a very special guest, Andrew Silver from MoLo Solutions. Andrew, thank you so much for taking your time to be on the show today.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Definitely. It took me a while to get you on the show. I think it was like 5 or 6 DMs asking if you want to be on the show, but it just like in sales, if you just keep going, after a while, something's going to, come up. So I'm really excited about this interview just because of your whole family. I think it's just fascinating what your whole family has done. It's to me a super just fascinating topic. So I want to talk about how did you well, I know that you got into logistics with your dad, but could you tell us about your childhood growing up with Jeff Silver being your dad, your brother being Matt Silver, any other siblings that are also maybe in logistics or not in logistics? But could you just tell us basically, what was it like growing up in the Silver family, and from what age did you get started getting involved in logistics?
Sure. So, where to start? I guess growing up in the Silver family. So my dad and stepmom both started working at American Backhaulers in the 80s, which was, I guess, somewhat America's first true freight brokerage once the industry had been deregulated. Obviously Robinson had existed previously as a produce company, but my dad was working for Paul Loeb at the time. Paul Loeb is in a lot of ways considered kind of like the godfather of freight. If you think about Chicago brokerage or brokerage in general, everything kind of ties back to American Backhaulers in some way, shape, or form. So my dad was working there before I was even born. And then I think kind of as a kid, I thought he just did stuff with trucks, but didn't know a ton there. And I don't know. I mean, we grew up affluent, certainly very privileged. But for me, I was certainly not the best kid. I was kind of a troublemaker, and I wanted to do well though. I wanted to be successful. I wanted to work. I didn't want to be some spoiled rich kid, and got the opportunity to start working for my parents when I was 16. I think the first day was the winter break of 2006, the day after Christmas, and really kind of fell in love with the industry. I wanted to do something, and this kind of was sales, and I was good at that. So worked on the carrier side for the first 5 years I was in the industry, mostly as an intern type role, because I was still in school and whatnot. So I was one of the first kind of summer interns at Coyote, and did that throughout school and just loved it.
Okay. And when you were in college, you were also a freight broker. I know that on a call with DAT or the podcast you did with DAT, you mentioned that you were booking a lot of freight at the University of Michigan.
Yeah. So I was a carrier rep, and I really started to have success after when I was going my senior year of high school. As that summer I was doing really well. And this year after that summer I did really well. And I think it was actually my second year in school that I just kind of kept working. Again, I was not a good student, at the University of Michigan. Those big public schools, you can sign up for big lecture classes, and your whole grade can be like one test at the end of the semester. And you didn't see that. I saw that as a way to kind of skirt the system and not go to class and just take the test, which meant I had a lot of free time, and my free time was otherwise not spent effectively, I should say, or in a productive manner. I was doing a lot of the dumb things that college kids do. But I really liked work. I mean, I really, as a carrier rep, I had some really good relationships with owner operators. That was kind of my focus. Even owner operators that 15 years later, I still talk to if I'm not even booking them on loads. I worked for them. And when I went back to school, I was making good money. I was paying for all my bar tabs and whatnot. And the thought was, I can keep doing this. It's easy to do. If you've got a good relationship with an owner operator and you're booking them 4 or 5 times a week, it's not that much upkeep other than making sure that they get the right loads. And when issues arise, that you take care of it. I used to use actually my drivers as an excuse to skip class. Like I'd go to class once in a while on a Thursday, say 1 o'clock, and I had a load picking up, and my driver would text me like, "Hey, picking up not working." I would just get up and leave and use that as an excuse to work instead of class. But I don't know, it was fun. It's you get it. I mean, freight brokerage is such a fun, lively environment. If your options are go to class or make money doing that, I think for me at least, it was a no brainer. I told myself that was going to be my career long term, so that was where I focused my time and energy.
Definitely. What about Matt, your brother? Is he older or younger?
He's older. So
Okay.
there are 7 of us.
Oh, wow.
6 boys, 1 girl. Matt's the oldest. I'm the second oldest.
Okay. Was Matt similar to you in terms of like misbehaving and just like, or was he more serious?
Yeah. I mean, he certainly wasn't more serious. I don't know that he was necessarily getting in as much trouble as I was. We all had our quirks and our things, and he was working too. He worked at Coyote for a long time. And I think similarly had aspirations to go out and do something kind of different, so to speak. I think one of the things in growing up and, growing up with someone like my father and stepmother as our parents is, they were obviously very successful and built great careers for themselves and took really good care of a lot of people. And, that certainly can be inspiring for you as a kid. And also puts a chip on your shoulder as to, I got to live up to those standards and
Sure.
get to that level, so to speak, was kind of the thought I always had. I think I first wanted to start my own brokerage when I was like 21, not actually start at them, but that's when I first started thinking about it. I just didn't feel like I could work at Coyote forever and work. That didn't feel like it would ever be enough for me.
Yeah, definitely. It's actually interesting to bring up because I had a follower ask me, he's a young kid, he's 19 years old and he wants to start a freight brokerage. What kind of advice would you give to someone that's 19 and wants to start a freight brokerage?
I mean, anyone can do it and anyone can be successful if they do it the right way. You got to be willing to work really, really hard. I mean, like really hard. At least the first couple of years we were working 15, 16, 17-hour days, just grinding to get the freight moved and get the customers. I mean, that's the hardest part is getting the customers. And in our industry where it's so saturated and everybody is largely the same. And I say that that may piss off some brokers who think they're so different, but most freight brokers are pretty similar. The way we do things may be different. Everybody has their own sets of rules that govern their organization, but largely we're all doing the same thing. I don't really think anybody's that differentiated. I think there are things that I could tell you that we do better than others, and I believe that to my core. But I think you see more marketing employees in our industry than anything else. And like if you were to compare marketing versus innovation, I think there's a lot more marketing than true innovation happening. And when I say marketing, I don't necessarily mean like healthy, honest marketing. I mean companies willing to say whatever it takes to make themselves sound different than the competitors, when in reality, everybody knows people are pretty similar. Our industry is fairly, I don't know if the right word is incestual, but it is. Everybody knows what every other company is doing because every company has 10 or 15 employees from all the other companies. I mean, it's just people are hopping from one company to the next. And if you see a company come out and say, "Hey, we created XYZ," and you're like, "One of your former employees works for me," and I know for a fact you didn't. Like, you just see that kind of stuff way too often in our industry. But sorry, I'm off the point. If you're 19,
no, definitely.
If you're 19 kid, you want to start a freight brokerage, do it. I mean, when I was 27 and wanting to do this, my dad actually told me not to. He said that the industry is going to consolidate. There's no room for another broker. There's going to be 4 or 5 big ones left, and they're going to eat up everybody else, and that's going to be the end of it. Like, I'll never forget that. I think I've said it maybe before in an interview, but my thought back was I don't believe that. In fact, I think that the more consolidation happens, the more opportunity there is for the hungry 19-year-olds like your follower to come in and make an impact. Because I think some of the biggest problems with larger brokerages is they lose the fire and they lose the hunger, and that the people just don't care enough and aren't bought in enough to make the magic happen that keeps their shippers coming back for more. because every day, I mean, you don't own anything in this industry. It's that old, I don't know what that saying is, but like rents due every day, whatever the saying is, right? And
Yeah.
my thought behind that is you could service customers well for 5 years. One specific customer, you could take care of them 20 loads a day for 5 years. And if you start slacking for even a week or two, there are 50, 100 brokers right behind you who want that business. And it doesn't take long before that shipper's going to consider giving it away.
Yeah.
So, you may be 19 today, 21, whatever, and you want to start brokerage, go out there and do it. I mean, when we got this thing going, we didn't know what we were doing. I mean, we were all young. I mean, all entrepreneurs that you could call us. Very few of us had experience running zero of us had experience running a business. A lot of us had experience in freight, and we knew what we wanted to build. We knew how we wanted to engage one another, the kind of culture we wanted to create. We knew how we wanted to take care of drivers and shippers. But with respect to running a business, we had no idea. I mean, literally no idea. I mean, the thought was, let's just stick to kind of our guns, stick to our values, so to speak, and just do the right thing all the time. And good things will come of that. If we keep our customers happy, then our business will grow. As simple as a concept as that is, that's how we thought about it, right? We just got to do better than our competitors. We're super competitive people by nature. But if we wanted to make the kind of impact we wanted to make, we knew we had to be better than the status quo, better than what shippers were getting from brokers as is in 2017. So if you're a 19-year-old kid today looking at this industry, pay attention to what other companies are doing and figure out how you can do more, right? You don't have to go build a bunch of fancy technology day one to be successful. You just got to find a way to get in with some customers and service them really, really well, grow with them. And you got to build a network of drivers and carriers. I think that's one of the biggest areas of opportunity for companies is they treat drivers like crap. And we're certainly perfect. I go and I see our DAT reviews and I'm like, it frustrates me sometimes, but we also have people who are focused on that. If you have 500 people, we have 550 or so employees today at MoLo specifically. Do I know that all 550 of them are always doing things the right way when they're talking to a driver or a shipper? No, certainly not. I think that their values are aligned, and I think that they want to do things the right way. In a lot of cases, things are out of your control, right? I mean, we'll have an issue on a load that's nobody's fault, right? And the shipper's agreeing to their rules. They'll pay us some detention, and the driver's going to maybe get upset because he lost out on $3,000 of missed opportunity. I mean, you hear a lot about opportunity cost when dealing with drivers who miss loads, and who should be paying for that. There's not a perfect system. There's not a perfect answer. Yeah. We try to just make sure we're doing good by drivers, doing good by the shippers, and trusting that will work out for us in the long run.
Sure. There's actually a couple of questions I have that are not like aligned with each other, but they come off of your answer. So with the market being so saturated right now, could you tell us maybe like what kind of differences you see now in the marketplace compared to when you started in 2006? Because I think the market's a lot more saturated right now. That's my belief. And then the second question is, how did you become the carrier or the broker of the year for Target and Budweiser and all the other shippers? How did you get so good?
Yeah. So how did you get so good? Our team worked really hard, but so you're giving my memory way too much credit if you think I really remember what it was like in 2006. I mean, I have vague memories of it. I will say it definitively was not that saturated back then. There's been this boom dating back to really 2015 when basically the whole world looked at our industry and said, look at what Uber did for taxis. Obviously, they could do that for trucks, and not Uber specifically, but just the concept of Uber for taxis. Yeah. And then everyone said, well, they should do it for trucks. And there's all this money that just got poured in thinking, yeah, there's no technology in the industry. So if we do what we did with Uber, then boom, everything gets easier in freight. It's just not the reality for a number of reasons. First and foremost, with Uber, at least for taxis, every single vehicle became a potential Uber car, right? And that just was a massive influx of supply you could put into the system, which made everything work a little easier. You can't do that with trucks, right? You don't have a CDL or a semi truck sitting in your driveway waiting for you to turn into a truck driver, right? I mean, there's a process to getting to that point. But my point here is there was so much investment made in this industry starting in like 2015 when all the kind of digital freight brokers came about. It put a lot of pressure on everybody else. I think that's always a win for the industry, is when there's pressure created amongst competition. Everybody is forced to be better. But yeah, this is the most saturated it's ever been. You know, I don't know that it even matters at this point whether it's 30,000 or 40,000. All I know is that every shipper gets 100 emails a day from somebody asking for their freight. You got to protect what you have and support your customers as well as possible to make sure you don't lose them. And you got to be hungry and go out and get the business. And you got to be banging down doors. I don't think there's a magic answer other than grit and grind. And I think that a lot of people think that they can kind of marketing ploy their way through this and it'll get them all these new customers. But at the end of the day, you know, a marketing ploy might get you in the door, but you got to show up and execute every day or you're going to lose that freight, which is why I don't really worry a ton about what others are doing. I think that for us, the reason we win awards for companies, whether it's for our service, for companies like Anheuser-Busch or Target, or it's, you know, our work environment, but, you know, with respect to the service aspect, it's our number one priority. It's all our people hear about from me and from our other executives is, are we living up to the commitments we made, right? You know, I don't think it's our job as the broker to determine the rules of the game. I think every shipper gets to determine their own rules. Anheuser-Busch, they make the rules for their freight. Every carrier and broker has to agree to follow them. And the reality is a lot don't, whether it's for AB or for any shipper. The natural inclination in our industry is to be short-sighted and do what's best for you today. And a lot of times that goes against the rules that a shipper sets for you, right? So a shipper might say, hey, we're agreeing to a 12-month rate cycle where you're going to give me a rate on Chicago to Atlanta for 12 months. I say, okay, great. Here's the rate. They approve it. And now we've got a routing guide and here we go. The challenge is there are a lot of times during the year where it's not advantageous for me today to move that freight because I'm going to lose money or whatever. And so a lot of brokers do that. They make the decision that's best for them today. The short-sighted nature is the biggest challenge in our industry. It's the reason why companies like us can be successful, is because we keep our eyes on kind of the long term, see the forest through the trees, understanding that if I service the shipper better than everybody else in the network I'm competing with, I'm bound to grow with that shipper. And if my business is growing, my people are happy because they're getting more opportunity. And if your people are happy, they're taking better care of your drivers and your shippers. It's kind of the cyclical thing that just works if you do it right.
Yeah, definitely. It's a great answer. Andrew, could you tell us a little bit about your time at Coyote and what kind of lessons that you learned, you know, from managing a team that you were able to transfer over when building the team in MoLo?
Sure. So, you know, I think we certainly tried to take the best of our experiences, and that applies to somebody who works with us today that worked at Coyote or worked at Robinson or worked at the shoe factory, wherever people come from. Our goal is that people take the best of those experiences and bring them with them and build on them, and then understand the worst of those experiences and leave them behind and make sure we don't do things like that. When I think about when I got involved here, we literally sat down and wrote out all the things that we thought people hated about freight brokers, right? The fact that they're way too cutthroat, like internally in terms of the work culture, way too cutthroat, that people will step over one another to make a quick buck, that typically when you have the split model where you have a carrier rep, an ops rep, a sales rep, a customer sales rep, that is, there's so much friction. And naturally, I think there's a lot of hatred that ends up happening where the different sides resent one another. I think what people don't realize is so much of this is out of your control as a middle person or middle company, whatever you want to call us these days. All we can really control is communication, right? And we're sitting at our office or in our home in Chicago, loads picking up in Atlanta and delivering to Miami. What control do I have over the driver going to pick that up, or the facility that's going to load them, or the facility that's going to unload them? And the answer is very little, none really. What I can't control is the way I communicate, right? And making sure I'm as effective and honest as I can be to put the driver in the best position to be successful, put the facilities in the best position to be successful. But what happens more often than not is issues arise, there are problems, and then somebody's pissed. The driver's pissed because he's waiting 8 hours and he doesn't want to be. So he calls your carrier rep and he starts yelling at the carrier rep, all pissed off. I want to get paid. I want this. I want that. Or it's the dispatcher yelling because they're going to miss the next load. Or the driver's late and they don't get loaded and the customer calls and they're pissed. And it's so easy in our industry for to take that frustration, that emotion, and just pass it on to the next person. So I'm getting yelled at. So I say, screw this. I'm going to go yell at my carrier rep now. And I've been like that before, and it's something I'm working on personally. But that was a big thing for us. And this is just one example of the environment we wanted to create was one where people supported one another, understood that we're all on the same team, knowing that if we work together, the end result, the end product will be so much stronger than if we resent one another and if we all hate working with each other. That's just one example, right? So you can apply that across the business. I've always thought that drivers are disrespected and not appreciated nearly enough in our industry, that brokers think that drivers work for them and it's not the other way around. I mean, the driver is as important of a customer as the shipper is. They might not be paying the bills, but you won't have any bills or invoices to turn in if you don't have drivers who want to haul for you. I think that's one of the things that we do really well is generally our reps work on behalf of the drivers. They work for the drivers and the carriers, and therefore there's loyalty developed and they work with one another, right? And there's an honest relationship where they know that we're going to do the best we can within our control to execute on their behalf and put them in a position to make as much money as possible. That's important.
Definitely. This actually will go hand in hand with, there's a question from a follower that actually builds on this. So the question goes, what do you look for in a carrier before giving them consistent freight?
So honesty, first and foremost. That was always a big thing for me. I spent 5 years as a carrier rep, and my thought historically was, on that first conversation you have with a carrier, try to understand as much as you possibly can about what they want, what their needs are, what they're trying to accomplish with their business, whether it's an owner op, a regionally based carrier, a national, whoever it is. Learn as much as you can, and then set expectations, right? I would try to make it clear to them that I'd be available whenever I can to answer their calls, whether it's day or night, whatever. And that I'd always be honest with them. And the ask in return is that they're always honest with me, and that don't put me in a position where I'm lying, and don't put me in a position where I'm lying. I don't even realize it. I don't want to be lying at all. But I need to know what's going on so I can effectively communicate with my customers, my shippers. So that honesty is a big thing. And obviously you want them to be on time. That some of that's out of your control. But if you have a driver who misses 4 out of 10 loads, that's a pretty clear problem versus missing 1 out of 10. Nobody's perfect, certainly not. But if you're getting the same excuses all the time, it's just a waste of everybody's time to be working with that carrier. So as a carrier, I would just say, be honest. The challenge is, this comes back to the nature of our industry. There is so much mistrust. Every carrier thinks that every new broker they work with is going to try to screw them over. And every broker thinks that every new carrier they work with is going to try to screw them over. And when you lead with that thought, the shippers think the same thing. But when you lead with that thought, you're starting with mistrust, and it just breeds more mistrust, because then everybody just acts in their own best self-interest, which is to cancel the load because you could get a better load, or cancel the carrier because you get a better carrier. Like, my people know they'd get fired in a second if they cancel load on a carrier because they found a cheaper carrier 10 minutes later. I mean, that's not even close to something that somebody could pull off in our business and get away with. But my point here is, somebody's got to start with the trust, right? You got to give someone opportunity, set the expectations clearly. Hey, this is what I expect of you. And if you do this, we can have a very successful relationship together where everybody's happy. Doesn't mean that issues aren't going to rise. That's another big thing, is you never know till you're going through it. But I used to always say it to the carriers, it's like, listen, when shit hits the fan, because it undoubtedly will, I just need to know that we can work through it together. If you pull over and threaten to hold my load hostage, if I don't give you $5,000 or whatever unreasonable amount you want, that's not in line with the norm, then I don't want to work with you, right? Yeah. And I'm the same way with you. Is I'm not going to put you in a position where when shit hits the fan, we just screw you over. We'll do the best we can, and we pay more money out of pocket for stores. I'm certain of this, than any other company per head. Because the thought naturally is to just approve it and take care of the carrier and move on and get the next load better. Right. And it's not the most efficient way to do it, but I think it's the right way to do it. And if there's one place where I'm happy to be inefficient and burning cash, it's in making sure that the drivers are taken care of on the things that are outside of their control. Doesn't mean that every time there's an issue, we tell a carrier we'll give you $5,000 a day to wait. But where someone else is saying you only get $250, we might be saying, hey, we recognize this was a really messed up situation. We'll pay this out of pocket to make sure you're taken care of.
Yeah, sure. So in terms of MoLo, could you tell us what the future holds for MoLo? What kind of changes might be seen because of the ArcBest acquisition? And how is it running a team that could potentially all work from home? Because I know that you announced that anyone could be working from home. How's that going?
Yeah, so a couple questions there. The future of MoLo, I mean, we should grow faster than we were previously growing based on the opportunity. One of the big reasons we did this deal with ArcBest, I mean, we could have done a deal with them or a private equity deal, but there was just so much potential for our companies together if we stay aligned on our mission and how we're going to support each other, our drivers, our shippers. ArcBest has 30,000 existing customers, shipper customers. MoLo has like 600. Right. And we did over 600 million in revenue in our fourth year. And that was off of only 600 customers. I mean, if you open the door to all these other customers, all that does is mean more opportunity for everybody, right? The business grows. Again, I said this before, but when the business is growing, it creates opportunity for every individual within the organization, right? And that's what matters. That's what drives people's buy-in. And if they're bought into doing things the right way, it again comes back to putting you in a position to grow more. So in terms of change for us, we're trying to limit the change as much as possible. We want to stay consistent to what we've been because our model works. We're very happy with it. Our customers are happy with it. Our employees are happy with it. So hopefully the only change is expedited growth. There will be, some time over the next 3-6 months where we're integrating our people they have an existing brokerage that we have to learn to work with, and we'll all be one team under kind of my team's leadership or whatever. And just learning how they do things and then working off one another to create the best long-term product for our business. That should be it in terms of change. Who knows what else, but the goal is to continue to make decisions with our people at the front of our minds in terms of their success and putting them in the best position to win. What else did you ask? I forgot already.
Working from home. You're letting everyone work from home, right?
Yeah. Our people did so well over the last 2 years. It just seems like a ridiculous thing for us to say you have to come back to the office. I think that's a very dated approach. I think that it's a lazy approach, frankly, that is more seated in micromanagement than anything else. I think that it pushes our people, our leaders, to be smarter and more effective in how they lead. You have to be more deliberate about setting up time with people one-on-one, right? It's not as easy as, hey, you're at your desk, I'm at my desk, I just grab you and say, let's go chat for 10 minutes. Yeah. I want to give you some coaching. But I value the time in the office, not in the winter. I hate how cold it is here in Chicago. I try to avoid it. But my point is, there is a ton of value. Everything I learned in this industry, I learned from sitting next to some of the smartest people that worked at Coyote. And that's the reality of it. Randy Miller, I'll give him a shout out. He's my first boss on the customer side. He's a freight savant. And I would not be where I am today if it were not for him and a number of other people within that organization who I learned from them sitting right next to them. Okay. It is definitely harder for that natural learning to happen and natural coaching to happen when people aren't sitting in a room together. Yeah, that's a trade-off. We didn't just commit though to having people allowing people to work from home though. We also committed to what will undoubtedly be the best office in the city of Chicago, right? This office that we signed a lease at 167 North Green, like it's spectacular. And it was a very conscious decision. Again, it's a super competitive industry. And for us, we're always thinking, what's our advantage over our competition? As a 4-year-old company, we didn't have a ton of advantages other than the youth and hunger and drive and grit. Those were our advantages against the big publicly traded 100-year-old companies or 50-year-old companies. That was our advantage. But they had more tech than us. They had more people than us, a bigger network than us, a nicer office than us for a long time. And we saw an opportunity here, one, to be on the front end of, or the forefront of allowing people to work remote. We've hired a lot of people who Their company said you have to come back to the office. We said you can work remote from ever as long as you do your job effectively. Boom, that's a competitive advantage for us now because we're offering employees something that our competitors weren't.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of companies have morphed into that too, and are taking a more remote, lenient policy, but none are making the kind of investment or commitment on the real estate side or the office side as we are. And to us, it's saying we're going to give people who want to be in the office the absolute best place to work in the city of Chicago. It's not just, in my opinion, the best office in terms of our industry. I mean, there are very few, if any, offices that are nicer than 167 North Green. I won't go into all the details there, but look it up online. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I've seen it. It's on
We got,
ESPN.
it was on ESPN. We got 90,000 square feet in there, which will allow us to sit 900 people. And that gives us just a ton of flexibility over time because we could have 1,500, 1,600 employees, but if only half of them want to go into the office on a given day, the office is not overrun and there's still plenty of space there. And so, that's a competitive advantage for us now is our office, is our remote work policy. So when I think about a 22-year-old kid who's graduating from Michigan State, boo Sparty, but they make great freight brokers, that's for sure. But he or she is walking around a career fair and they're looking at the 5 or 6 different really good Chicago freight brokerages to work for. And they know that they can come to a place like MoLo and work from home whenever they want, or go to the best office in the best neighborhood in Chicago. I think that that's a real advantage for us. And it's a big reason why we did it.
Yeah. What kind of changes do you foresee in the industry for the next 20 years? And then real quick, I just wanted to ask this question. Are you still using your dad's TMS mastery at MoLo? Like you don't have to use ArcBest's TMS?
No. So we will use the Mastermind technology. Mastery is the company, Mastermind is the TMS.
Is it amazing?
It will be. We're the earliest users of it.
Cool.
We were kind of the guinea pigs as they were. They're building it as we're using it, so it gets better every month. They do new releases, and the tools and whatnot get better. It'll be pretty phenomenal. There's a reason that some of the largest asset-based companies are committed to using it. I think we're the largest pure play broker. At least we were pure play broker. Now we're part of this kind of whole logistics organization that is ArcBest.
Sure.
But yeah, it'll allow for a lot of connectivity with shippers directly and within our organization to be smarter about how we move freight. What was the other thing? Oh, changes in the industry over the next 2 years. I have no idea, man. What I don't think is going to happen is I don't think brokers are getting replaced anytime soon. I don't think that autonomous trucks is the end of the broker by any means. I think that we will still have to be very involved in navigating the ups and downs of the market and just supply chain in general. I think that technology will continue to grow in terms of how it makes people more efficient. But I don't think that technology replaces the freight broker by any means. I think that's the biggest question people are always wondering. And what's going to happen in 20 years? I don't know. I'm not a fortune teller, so I don't have those answers. But sure. I do know that there will always be shippers who need help moving their freight. And there will always be a ton of freight brokers trying to do it. And as long as companies like MoLo do it better than most of them, we'll be in good shape. And that is true for, any number that you can replace MoLo with a number of names there. And they have every opportunity to be successful as we do. I used to have this idea in my head that there'd be one winner, right? And I think that was just a really, really competitive side of me saying we could take them all out. I no longer believe that. I think that's a little childish in nature, but I think that there's going to be plenty of winners and plenty of companies that are really, really successful in this space. And they just need to continue to be customer centric and thinking about how to put their customers in the best position to be successful.
Okay. I like that. So I have a few questions left here from my followers. So let's see here. What have we not touched on? Oh, what do you want for your birthday, which is tomorrow? Happy birthday.
Thank you. I don't want anything. I don't know. I want the market to be favorable for us. And I want us to land more customers. That's what I want from our
Okay.
I always want more customers.
Well, I hope your dreams or your wishes come true.
Thank you.
And then Andrew, there's a question about blockchain. What do you think of the use of blockchain and logistics in the future of blockchain? Do you have any thoughts on that?
MoLo blockchain. No, I'm not that smart. I don't know enough. I'm not very tech savvy, technologically inept, actually. I bought some crypto, but with respect to blockchain, it's funny because the reason that Matt Vogrich is MoLo's COO, one of his co-founders, and him and I were friends in college. But the reason that he and I first started talking, and this was in like 2015, 2016, he was working at IBM. And this is, again, 2015, 2016. And he was trying to sell me on blockchain. And he was like, hey, we should talk IBM, Coyote, blockchain. And I was like, that. And that was at the time where everyone was like, that's a farce. It's nonsense. And I didn't know. I said it was a farce too, but I really had no idea. I didn't see the practical value then. I understand how it could be valuable in supply chain today, right? And being able to track the I guess the truthfulness of, the origin of anything, really, if it's done effectively. But I struggle to see the value in brokerage specifically. I've yet to see a use case that made a ton of sense to me. And again, I'm not well versed in it. I have not done a ton of research in it. So I'm maybe not the best person to ask, but that's my 2 cents on it.
Okay. Okay, we touched on most of these questions. So I guess the final question, which I usually ask my guests, is what kind of advice would you give to a recent college grad?
So I think this remote environment now we all live in, whether you as a brokerage allow your people to be remote or not, there is way too many opportunities for a potential employee to go work remote full-time somewhere else. So you're disadvantaged if you don't create that as an opportunity for your people. But I think what it's doing is it's forcing these 21, 22-year-old college kids to make a decision. So as an example, again, when I was in college, I would sign up for the easiest classes possible so I could try to skirt through them. And then when the question was, do I need to go to class or can I get away with not going to class? I usually chose not going to class. I was that lazy kind of college kid. You don't tend to grow out of that until you get a real job. The challenge with today's remote world is it's kind of giving these college grads the opportunity to continue to find a way to skirt by, because you can, in a remote environment, cheat the system, so to speak, and get away with doing the bare minimum, where it was a little harder to do that if you actually had to get up and go to the office and go to work. Now, to me, it doesn't bother me. I don't care. I think people can make whatever decisions they want. They're adults. Our job as the employer is to give them expectations and let them agree to them, and then let them do them and give them metrics to manage them. And if they don't meet them, then they can't work here. But as a 21, 22-year-old college grad now, what I'm saying is there's so much temptation, more temptation to do the skirting by, to do the lazy option, when there's really a ton of opportunity in the world today to come in and make an impact somewhere. And I just think that people, my caution or my warning to people is to not let that temptation to be lazy get in the way of any ambition you have, right? And I think that at the end of the day, we spend way too much of our lives working. And, if you think about a 24-hour day, a healthy person, not a normal freight broker, a healthy person gets 8 hours of sleep a day. So you've got 16 hours when you're awake. Most jobs you're working 8 to 9 hours a day, whatever. So, more than half of your waking hours are spent working. There are so many jobs available today. Don't take a job if you can't feel like fulfilled when you do it. Don't take a job if you're not happy doing it. And I understand that everyone's situation is different. And I certainly speak from a place of privilege and whatnot. But in today's world, there are so many opportunities out there. And if you're graduating college, I'm certain there are plenty that you can step into. Find a company that you align with what they're trying to get done, with their mission, their values and whatnot. Make sure they actually follow through and act on those and are doing things the right way. And then give it everything you have, right? I mean, your 20s are the time when you have the most energy, and you should have as much fun as you can, but you should also put as much of yourself into something as you can, whether it's work, well, specifically work related. Try to find something you can be passionate about. about, because it's so much easier to do a job when you're passionate about it. And give it everything you have. But like, if it's not fun, quit and go do another job, because it's just, that's the advice really is, if you find yourself miserable every day at work, it's just, life is too short to be miserable all the time. And I've been there. I've been super miserable before, and it's less fun that way. And you got to find a way to pull yourself out of it. And sometimes it means changing jobs or just making sure you're in a job that you can be happy in.
Totally. I mean, I love that. I started doing free caviar full time, and I absolutely love it. I'm so passionate about it, and I'm actually making money off of it. I can support myself, and my revenue is growing monthly. So it's, I totally agree with that. So
very cool.
Well, Andrew, any last thoughts, any last things you would want to say before we wrap up?
No, I appreciate you having me on. I love your content. It's funny, and our people all love it. We use Slack, and we've got these different groups based on whatever people want to create. We've got one that's called Dank Freight Memes, and it's got your content in there like once a day. So you, the MoLo team, loves your content. We appreciate it very much.
I appreciate that too, and thanks, Andrew, for taking your time. Have a great birthday, and hopefully we could meet up sometime when I'm in Chicago.
Sounds great. Let me know when you're here.
Definitely.
See ya.
Thanks, Andrew. See ya.
Thanks for tuning in to the Daily Freight Caviar podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, or if you didn't, leave a review. Let me know what you think. I appreciate any feedback. If you'd like to have more Freight Caviar content, go to freightcaviar.com and subscribe to my email newsletter.